This is a podcast about both having autism and living with someone who has autism. My mom is Sonya, and I'm Josh, and this is Josh Has Autism.
Hey everybody, welcome to Josh Has Autism.
Hello.
How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You need a haircut pretty soon, I think. But you know what I love is that just at the bottom you have these little ringlets.
Oh my gosh! I have straight hair until it gets longer.
Right.
And then it does that tight curl. Yeah.
Right. So it's by your sideburns. It gets really tight, like kinky curly there, and then the very back. I like it. I like it curly. So I read an article today, and I want to talk to you about that because I thought it was interesting, and it brings up some questions for me.
Okay.
And I'll preface it by saying, do you remember us having conversations a while back, but just before you turned 18, how there were certain ways that it was necessary for you to behave in public whenever you were on your own? You know, if you're out with us, it's one thing, you know, it's kind of a little bit like your safety net, bodyguard, whatever it is, right? Yeah. But when you're out by yourself, and I knew that would be, you know, on its way, you know, for you to have your own independent life is independent, not meaning you live on your own or you're away from us, but you can, at the point when you were going to start to drive, you know,
I could do things independent of you.
Correct. It's the best way to put it. So it was a big concern for us back then that you understood what was acceptable and what wasn't. Because a couple of things happen when you're 18. Well, for you and others that are on the autism spectrum, services that you had been afforded up to that point are gone. And the other thing is that now the law says that you're an adult. And so it was super important for us as your parents to teach you things that were okay and things that weren't okay. And so a lot of times things would just fall through the cracks because we're not you. We don't think like you. So, you know.
Right.
But there would be just things that, not that you necessarily would, but, you know, I had to teach you can't touch anybody. You can't put your hands on anybody. You can't, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not that you're violent, but if you just had to have that conversation. You're not violent in the least.
Right.
But if you were going to do something to, for example, if somebody was really distressing you, you couldn't just kind of, you know, even gently move them out of to get away or whatever it is. You had to be very cautious. And I'm not expressing this very well because it's been a while back and I don't remember exactly what was said, but I remember it was this lengthy conversation about what it was super important for you to avoid as an adult guy. You know?
So it wasn't just about if someone was upsetting me or whatever. It was also that even with good intentions, I can't put my hands on someone because it could be construed as harassment.
Something like that. And also it is when you get physically
distraught.
Yes, and when you get overwhelmed with something, when you feel like, you know, there have been times where you had to very quickly move out of a situation.
Yes.
I know that you have accidentally bumped into people. And it's just when you turned 18, I understood that the laws are different and the way that you would be viewed as an individual in society changes. You're no longer a kid, you're an adult, so things get changed. Right. So I remember talking to you about all that and being concerned that you didn't quite have the understanding of how to behave out in public on your own.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not that you ever did anything inappropriate. It just is a concern because I know if you get elevated, if you get overwhelmed, if you feel like there's just so much going on and you have to get out of a situation, what would you do? Because
Right.
at that moment, you're not thinking, "Oh, I can't rush past somebody and bump into them, or I can't move them physically. I can't I can't tell people stop talking to me." You could, but it just might.
Will make it worse. Yeah.
Yeah. So just try to help you to figure out the best way to proceed.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I'm bringing that up is because there's an article that I read today, and I'm just going to read you a couple of things. When I read you the heading, it says, January 6th defendant spared prison after judge finds his Asperger's syndrome played a part in him joining the riot. Interesting, because when I hear that this guy has autism, I feel different than maybe most of society, I guess, because I think about you.
Yeah.
I think about, you're not this guy.
Mm-hmm.
You do your own thing. You've figured out how to maneuver through the difficulties that you have.
Right.
But as I was reading this, there were some things that made me think about you. And in the first place, they were going to try to give him 57 months in prison. What he did was he got to the Capitol building and just so that you know, on January 6th, there was a all the people went and they tried to overturn stop the presidency being sworn in, and
all the votes and stuff like that.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. So that's what we're talking about here. Anyway, when he went there, he broke some windows in the Capitol building. He was going to be charged with one felony, that's the bad one that will get you sent to prison, and that's the one that doesn't come off your record, and that's the one that means you're in pretty deep.
Right.
And then there was some misdemeanors. That means that other things they were not lawful, but they weren't as bad. Here's a couple of things I wanted to ask you about with this. So this guy, what they're saying is that during the pandemic, he became specifically obsessed with all the online political discussions that were taking place.
Mm-hmm.
Also said that he's influenced by assertive male figures, and that can happen to different people. They grow up differently, and
right.
They're compelled or drawn towards certain types of people.
Right.
And so anyway, he also was up front. And what's interesting to me is that they asked him why he wanted to be up front, is because he wanted to be up front because he wanted to, he always wants to be up front because he wants to be a part of a group. He wants to belong, and being up front.
He can see what's happening. Is that
because he doesn't want to be left out.
Hmm.
Yeah, to him, like if he's up front, he's not going to be left out.
Right.
And I remember when you were in school, much, much younger. I don't know if you remember this or not, but I guess that's the reason I thought about you, like why we had to have the talk of you knocking into people when you get stressed or overwhelmed.
Right.
Is because you needing to be first in line was such a big deal that I would get calls a couple of times. Look, you knocked a little girl down trying to get to the front of the line.
Yeah.
Not your intention whatsoever, but it is what happened. So we had to address that to get you to be aware of your surroundings.
Right.
It's interesting is that the things that they're talking about with this guy, it's something that makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you? How he could be a part of something and not necessarily have the harmful intent in mind, rather than he was exposed to a way of thinking. He believed that way of thinking, and then listened to these strong individuals that were purporting that to be truth, and this is what we need to do about it. Now, I'm not making a political statement one way or another. I'm saying with this particular guy, in this particular situation, people had very strong emotions about whether this was legit or it wasn't legit, you know, whether Trump was still going to be president or Biden was president, going to be president. So people had very strong feelings about this. Well, he had been listening to the information that was a certain way, which is that Trump won. He should still be, he still should be president.
Right.
And what's interesting to me is that how the judge took into account. So again, he was going to be sentenced. The recommendation was that he was going to be sentenced to 57 months. And the judge sentenced him to 240 days of home confinement. And his reason was, the judge's reason, was that his Asperger's syndrome or his autism made him particularly susceptible to the influences that day. And the judge admitted that, he's given him a break. He even told the guy, I'm giving you a break. He had to pay just over $2,000 in restitution. But there was a question then. Well, before I get to that, it makes me sad that he found himself in this situation. And at the same time, how many times have you and I talked about, when I've said to you, I don't care if it's autism or not, this is not acceptable.
Right.
There are things that things that you've got to learn in life. This is okay and this is not okay.
Right.
And so I do understand he had a chance to speak for himself in court, and he had a very difficult time. Very difficult time conveying how he felt. Couldn't find the words to express himself. And that was something that the judge saw and really understood that he was not, would not do okay in prison, and was not going to be served, and society's not in danger by him not going to prison. When he tried to talk for himself, he kind of, you could tell like he was getting very agitated and put his arms up, and that, again, made me think about you. Because a lot of times when you get overwhelmed, when you're trying to explain something and struggling to find the words, you put your arms up around your head and,
Yeah, and it's very agitated and almost pacing without moving sometimes. And it's, for me,
Yeah. This was interesting because a majority of the time, when somebody with autism, it has anything to do with a crime, they're the victims. It's just the way that it is. The majority of the time, they're a victim, not somebody like him that, went with the crowd. He said that the crowd started walking. He took an Uber there. And the crowd started walking, and he went with them. And he just said, why is he up front then? Do you remember seeing a picture, Josh, of the guy with the horns? He's wearing the horns.
Yeah.
And this guy was standing right next to him.
Okay.
She's in the front.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I can see both sides of this. I can see people going, come on, the dude was right up front. He was totally involved. He was totally, enmeshed in this. And I'm not going to argue that, but I will say that this dude could have been enmeshed in this for entirely different reasons. I can see him wanting to be up front. I can see him wanting to be a part of this. They're moving, they're walking, so am I. And if we're walking, I'm up front.
For me, whenever there's something where there's a big crowd and everyone's moving and everything like that, I would want to be towards the front. Not necessarily because I'm a part of it or anything, but so that I can see what's going on in front of me and not be blocked in.
Mm-hmm. And his, through his, I don't know if it was through his lawyers or he said it himself, but it was so that he wouldn't be left behind. Kind of like that, like he wanted to be,
Yeah.
And so that makes sense. And what I'm saying is that I hear what they're saying. I can also hear people, and this is just too, because this is one of those things where I'm saying there are multiple ways of looking at this, and I'm not disputing any of them. I'm not saying that one is right over the other or one is wrong over the other.
Right.
But what was I going to say?
Well, I have a thought of this.
Okay, good.
So, what was the thing about broken windows?
Yeah, he broke a couple windows in at the Capitol building.
The windows, as far as I know, the only windows that were really broken were the ones that were outside.
Well, he admits, he says that he's sorry about breaking the window. He's acknowledging what he did. He's acknowledging what he did. But I wish I could remember what the other thing that I was just about to say to you. I got so sidetracked, so many different things going through my head all at once.
Yeah.
But what I do see is that, oh yes, I know what the third one was.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one, he's autistic, and I can see how he's thinking differently than a mob where some have said they're going to kill somebody, wanting to kill somebody in that building versus him.
Right.
I can see that there's a difference. I also understand that there might be people that hear about this and go, well, the prison system is full of people with mental disabilities and developmental disabilities. The prison is full of people like that. I didn't get a judge that would see that this was influencing the behavior and that person needed to be given a break.
Right.
The prison system is full of people that, for one reason or the other, are more than likely not really at a point that they could stand up for themselves, or they could speak on their own behalf, or they could clarify something that's a misunderstanding.
Right.
And
what was the third point of view?
That one, that people would say, well, yeah, why does somebody with autism get to catch a break when the whole prison system is full of people?
Okay. I thought that was the second one.
No, the first one is that he's got autism. And because of that, his processing is different.
Okay.
The purpose in doing something is different. It's just like how I say to you, this is super, super simplified and not have anything to do with it, but it'll make my point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like how we've said to you, every other person that I've ever spoken to, I think if they say okay, I know what their okay means. But you say okay, it doesn't mean, oh, I got you, I'm with you, okay, got it. Let's do that.
Right.
Yours, make a joke about it. Your means, yes, I hear you, leave me alone. Right?
Right.
Words are different for you. And I'm learning new things about you every single day. this far into it, right?
Right.
So what I'm saying is that there's motives that people have. There's desires to make change that people have.
Mm-hmm.
In that particular situation, they were very, very strong personalities. And there's a guy that has autism that is believing the things that he's hearing, and yet he's saying, I didn't, and I believe him. Why is he there? Why is he up front? Is he a leader of this? Is he the one barking orders? No. Does he want to be up front? That's my point to you. From an autistic understanding, his reasons are different than other people that were there, and he's saying so. Then there's you have to look at it seriously. This is an attempt to overthrow the government. Got to take it seriously. And then there are people, the third one that I'm telling you about, is people saying, well, why give someone with autism a break when the prison system is full of people that deserve breaks as well?
So, let me see if I'm getting the three things. So there's that people with autism see things differently, so that they would have different motives.
Because I know you,
mm-hmm.
and I have been so fortunate to meet so many people with autism,
mm-hmm.
Because of you.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that there can be some outbursts, that there's a rigid way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I also say that my understanding leads me to believe that yes, there's a different interpretation, and it's not one. I tend to believe this gentleman that got caught up in something and was not one of the ones going, let's go kill Pelosi. Right? Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House.
Mm-hmm.
In the House of Representatives.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm trying to parse this down because you're being very wordy.
Sorry.
So it's really hard to follow.
Okay.
So the first group is, or the first bullet point, I guess you'd call it,
mm-hmm.
of the three was that people with autism see things differently, and so would probably have a different motive than other people. The second thing then I still don't really get, because it was too wordy.
That he was there and he was a part of it, and he needs to take his punishment. Does that make it clearer?
That's the hard line, yeah. It sounds like, I think that's what it's called anyways.
Yeah.
A hard line stance, whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's, I had it. What was the third one?
That why would he deserve a break when the system doesn't care about so many others that have their own types of limitations?
Okay. So, what those 3 points sound like to me are all facets of the same thing, just from a different point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And so from those 3 points, it's the point of view of a, not sympathetic, but a could this be why
mm-hmm.
point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Another is the laws as written.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is, why should I care?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the reason that I'm even talking about this today is because I'm sure that you can understand this. You know, look, another headline says, January 6 rioter gets probation, not prison, after judge finds autism played a role. Those kinds of headlines get my attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't, when I read something like that, I can't but help go to you and, the people that I've met and I know with autism. And I just think about what that would be like.
Yeah.
And I feel for him being in a courtroom, trying to find the words to express himself, feeling overwhelmed. It's and not being able to, so that he grabs his head and, just begins to what we call shutting down.
Right.
My heart hurts for him in that moment. And of course, because of you, I'm on the side of, give him another shot, give him another chance.
So there's a couple points that I'd like to make about this. First is that I have no prior knowledge of this thing.
Right.
Of this court thing.
Mm-hmm.
And because I have no prior knowledge to any of that involving a person with autism being in court, I don't know any of the details other than what you've said here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't have enough information to be able to say much about it in this particular case.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, I'm trying to put it into words. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can understand wanting to be in the front, like I had said, to be able to see things going on and to want to be a part of something.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand that, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
The parts that is difficult for me is that for one thing, the thing with the windows is sticking with me because I remember seeing on TV the windows being broken with anything they could grab. And they weren't regular glass either. But my point is, he had to have worked for that to be able to break it.
No, I don't know.
But I'm trying to put this into words where it's a coherent thing, and still have not a large break in between of what's said. The second big point is that I don't know how effective having 240 days of confinement at home would be for him.
Well,
for two reasons. One, personal experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, people who listen to the podcast, and definitely you, know that I'm perfectly okay staying at home.
Right.
But the other part of that is that, like you had said, he got a lot of this information online.
Mm-hmm.
He was reading and listening or whatever
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of this stuff online.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering how that would help at all. Considering I haven't read anything else about it or whatever.
Right, right. I think that this subject matter is more gets to me more emotionally than you, because you're receiving it and it's a matter of fact situation for you. Did he do this or did he do this? If he did this, then this. I would want to be up front because of this, but I don't know anything else about that. I get what you're saying. And
I think that's part of why he was so frustrated and couldn't find the words, was because he couldn't explain why he felt the way he did.
You might be absolutely right about that. Among being in a stressful situation,
right?
Because that's one of the reasons that I go back to when you were turning 18 and we had to talk to you about all this stuff, because you start getting elevated. You don't think about what's going to happen. You have to get out of a situation, or you shut down, or you don't,
right.
Know how to, maneuver through particular events.
Right.
What I'm saying is that I wish that the legal system would take everything to an account, like they afforded this gentleman. I wish that they would always take into an account what people are dealing with and where they come from. Yes, people have to deal with the consequences of their actions. That's something that you and I've talked about your entire life. There's consequences.
Right.
But not everybody that's in prison has been heard for who they truly are, and met where they can, at a point where they're these I don't know if anybody else heard that.
Couple jet.
Yeah, it's a Navy jet. So anyway, one of the things that came up for me, so yes, you're right. I'm emotional about this because I don't care you're 34, you're my kid. And for all the years that, you leave the house, I'm just like, oh, come on. Just be safe,
Right.
Yes, because of you, I come down on the side of this, that I'm grateful that this judge saw him for who he is, and I hope that he gets the opportunity to decompress and to be able to get away from spending the time on the internet, because that can be a dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that he's not going to be sitting in jail, which is a place that he's not going to function in. He's not going to be able to do well. And I don't know what it means too, is because when I'm saying that there's other, one of the things that came up is this is a mental disorder. Well, I am well aware too that the autism spectrum disorder is, I guess it's actually categorized as a mental disorder or mental illness, but it's also classified as a neurodevelopmental disorder, like a subclass of subcategory of mental disorders.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting too, because it kind of like sparked this debate. And well, which one is it? You know what I mean? Is it a mental illness or is it a neurodevelopmental disorder? Which one is it?
Right.
And I think that what autism usually comes with other diagnoses, and those other diagnoses are mental disorder, anxiety, depression,
right.
things like that.
ADD.
Yeah, right. But there's not a medication for autism. I put that in quotes.
Your finger quotes, yeah.
Finger quotes. There's not a medication for autism, but other behaviors are treated. The feelings that come up can be treated.
Right.
But yes, so what I am, and I'm not expecting you to know about this. I'm not expecting you to do anything other than what you're doing right now. You know, which is taking in the information and being matter of fact about the way that, you know, what you're hearing. You know, there's no emotion that I expected to come up for you. It just understand that for me, the reason I'm bringing it up is because it does bring up emotions for me.
Right.
It's that concern about, you know, even today, whenever, if there's a situation, are you going to be okay?
Right, right.
You know, I mean, all of my kids, all my family, my friends, I want, you know, for people to be
all
safe.
All your kids. You have two children.
Well, I have 2 kids. I have a son-in-law. I have 2 grandbabies, you know, and then the kids that are, you know, from high school. Yeah. Haley's, you know, Hannah Banana.
Oh, jeez.
And, you know, everybody. So, I just feel like I want, but there's something special with you, Josh. It's just different for me. It's that I can kind of, you know, let go a bit with, you know, because everybody, you know, the adults, but with you it's different. I'm always, you know, I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying that this is how it is. When you leave the house, I'm just sending you, you know, a prayer as you go out that you're going to be safe and, you know, you're going to be okay in situations.
Yeah.
And when I read this story about this guy that made decisions, got himself in trouble, that I saw this, and I'm grateful that the judge saw this, that as I'm reading about it, I can really understand why he did some things that he did that are not like what they look like. Right, the motives were different.
Right.
So, anyway, I guess I just wanted to talk about that because I feel like this is a crazy world that we're in, and I feel like this guy got protected a bit, and somebody in the position of authority saw him for who he is. And what he saw, and this is why I get emotional, because what he saw in that man standing there in the court was what I see when I see you and when I see your friends that have autism. It's what I see, which is it's a heart of gold. It's not the intentions to harm. It's, you know, if anything, it can be some confusion sometimes. It can be,
yeah.
You know. I tell you all the time. Connor will ask me, "Gammy, are you mad?" "Nope, buddy. I'm frustrated."
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I get emotional about it because I feel like this guy was seen. And that's what I've fought for you for your entire life, so that you can be seen.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that he was seen. So, anyway. That's it, I guess. I don't know, that's all I wanted to talk about. I thought it was interesting. I thought that, you know, this that meant something to me, to see that this guy with autism was actually seen and not just treated like a number in society, right, and just tossed in jail because he did the wrong thing, and it's all viewed the same way.
Right.
Because I feel like people do need to be viewed for who they are.
Right.
And their intention. So, yeah. All right. Well, we'll get out of this one. I'll tell you something. We got a few minutes left. Are you okay, or do you need to go?
I think I'm okay.
Okay. All right. I had the worst show I have ever had in my entire time doing stand-up 2 nights ago.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. It was awful. So, yeah.
It was a comedy show.
It was stand-up. It was a 5:45 in the afternoon show.
Which is weird to begin with.
Which is, it's very strange. I didn't even know what kind of thing it was. It was at some barn down in North Carolina. Beautiful. It's a wedding destination, so it's just beautiful. But anyways, the COO was retiring. So here's...
That you found that out after you got there.
After I got there, yeah.
Which usually you're able to find out that kind of stuff well before the show even...
Yeah, it's nice for me to know what kind of gig it is.
Yeah.
What it's for,
Yeah, what kind of venue, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So this had multiple factors that just made it impossible from the beginning. A lot of times when you have company shows, it's difficult anyway because all these people come together from work, so they're work people. They're
co-workers.
Co-workers. They're not necessarily friends, but they're all there together.
Right.
And people are guarded too because it's a work function.
Right.
If sometimes it's sort of like, if they laugh at this, can I laugh at this? Because the boss is not laughing at this. If I laugh at this, am I going to be
in trouble? Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever it is. So that makes it hard anyway. So that's the first thing against me. The second thing against me, they didn't even introduce me. The only thing I heard was there's a comic, Sonya, come up here. That was it. And I barely heard him. Oh, what, is that it? Yeah, I'll go. So I went. Well, the microphone was not sufficient for where we were, and people couldn't even hear what I was saying.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm saying when he called me up there, I didn't even hear. If he had said something else, I don't know about it.
Right.
But I was paying attention. I was looking because I saw him go up and get the microphone. So I was actively looking at him. The other thing is they did it during dinner. And there's round tables. So out of 6 people at a table, you figure there's 4 of them not facing me. Right. Well, they just got their dinner. They're not going to turn around. They're not going to stop eating. They're not going to pay attention to what was being said. The other thing, there was no light.
There was no difference between where you were standing and anywhere else?
No, and I had to stand, I forgot to tell you this, I had to stand behind a podium with balloons all around it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I'm 5'2". So, anyway, it was horrible. And, oh my gosh, it by far, and I just kept thinking...
And it was, if I remember correctly, it was the first time they'd ever asked someone to do comedy.
Yeah, it was the first time for stand-up, ever.
Yeah.
And when I got there, I met people, but I thought that they were from the venue, which means like that nice barn.
Right.
Were they representing them? Nope. Found out it was, and I didn't even know this. It was the HR person that I was dealing with for the company.
Oh.
So I was just so confused. She said we're so disorganized. We don't, it's nothing's really working well.
Great PR for that company.
Yeah. So, I started and nothing. I mean, talk of nothing.
Your part was how long?
I only had to do it. Originally, it was going to be an hour, and an hour and a half. It got cut down to an hour. So,
total.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, it was just, it was awful. But what happens? I've been doing it long enough that I don't get my feelings hurt. I don't get panicky or anything. I'm just
Right.
like, oh, this stinks. So I was just thinking, I'm going to get paid. I'm getting paid. I'm getting paid. So as I'm doing this, basically what I'm doing is I might as well be sitting in here at the office doing my comedy show with nobody here, because that's what it was like.
Wow.
Yeah, it was bad. So, anyway, that was, I just want to say, my worst comedy gig of my entire stand-up comedy career happened 2 nights ago.
Wow.
Everything was against me. It just was not, they could care less that I was there.
Did they know you were there?
Some of them I don't think so.
Wow.
And even the ones that did see me up there, they couldn't hear what I was saying.
Right.
And so they stopped paying attention.
Right.
Because they're like, okay, well, it was like kind of a background buzz, I guess.
Yeah. It's like, hey, do you know what's going on? No. Let's
Right.
just keep eating.
Yeah, pretty much. And I found out, too, that it's really weird, the things that affect people, is that they were told there was going to be an open bar
Oh, geez.
at this dinner. It was a fancy dinner.
Yeah?
Yeah, I remember I brought you to the chocolates home.
Oh, yeah, not Ghirardelli. What was it called?
Rocher.
Ferrero Rocher, yeah.
Yeah, in a little plastic.
Yeah.
Very,
in a
very
little
cute.
plastic version of Beauty and the Beast rose container.
Yes. So it was just very, very fancy. And everybody was told it's going to be an open bar. But then other people were told, you can bring your own. Well, so what happened is, right before I went on, people were told, no, it's not an open bar, and you're not allowed to bring your own alcohol into the venue.
So they were already upset.
They were, right before I went up, so they were upset that they're, if they wanted something to drink, they had to buy it.
Wow.
And they couldn't drink what they were told to bring, that they could bring.
Huh.
So, anyways, I was just interrupting their anger fest, I think. They were eating and they were mad and they were not interested in having me there at all. So, anyways, but I'm going to do a show tonight, so just get up, brush it off, keep going. Yeah. But that was funny. I mean, talk about not being part of a group, right?
Right.
Like, just standing up there, like, going, what? It was nothing. I did end up telling my one of my favorite jokes. I don't know if you're going to think this is fun. I'll say that one of my favorite jokes that I ever heard. I'll say that, and then we'll be done, because you're having that look. Okay. A guy opened his front door, and there was a snail right on his porch. And he kicked it. The snail flew across his yard, across the street, way over into his neighbor's yard. And that was that. 6 months later, the doorbell rings. The guy opens his front door. The snail is standing right on the porch. He looks at him. The snail looks at him. The snail says, "What was that all about?" Get it?
Yeah.
That's a funny one.
Yeah.
I like it. It's a little snail with perseverance. All right. Anyway. I don't think you got very much out of this podcast, but thanks for letting me talk to you about all that, Josh. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It just got to my heart when I read about this guy and what he'd been through and decisions he made and how it ended up and
Right.
and on and on. So anyway, everybody, thank you out there for listening to us. Listening to me go on and on today. I appreciate it. If you give us 5 stars wherever you listen, that's great. That'd be so appreciated. We have other podcasts. You can check us out on the website and listen to them as you'd like. It's SonyaKing.com. SonyaKing. And yeah, I hope you're doing well and you're happy out there. Love you.
Bye.